Welcome back to the Weekly Intention with Michael Mulder. This is actually part 2 of the 2-part Power Couple series. Last week, I got a chance to interview Kellen Moen. Super excited, and you might recognize the guy next to me, and we're actually back for another round. Before I introduce him, this is somebody that I respect a lot, and I think that a leader is personally someone that you follow, and that's not someone that like demands respect. They give you respect. So if you want to understand what it truly means to be a selfless leader, to have an iron mindset, to be able to pivot in life and really meet challenges head on, this is a great one for you to watch. And without further ado, this guy next to me has done so much. He's a Hall of Famer at the Oregon Ducks, played for the Ducks in baseball, was drafted by the Royals, was a super top seller at the company with me for a few years, ended up being a director of sales, and now is a partner in VYRL Marketing, which is the building we're in right now. And this is Kellen Moen. Welcome, dude.
Hey,
welcome back.
To be back. Where it all started, right? This is where we kicked this whole thing off, and now look at you going.
Where it all started. So funny thing about this whole show is April, when all this COVID stuff happened, I started this thing with him, and all we did was Instagram live back and forth. Every single Tuesday we would meet, we would Instagram, and we'd start talking about like what we wanted to accomplish and started to hold ourselves accountable. And that's where I thought, hey, every single week we're like setting weekly intentions for our life. Why don't we call it the Weekly Intention? And then from there I started adding, like little videos like that you've seen, and then I got all this equipment. I've been interviewing all these leaders on mindset. So it's been super, super awesome. And one thing that we didn't really get a chance to do when we talked about, that show is we never got to get into your background and really give people a feeling for like why you are the way you are.
That's true.
I feel like we got a chance to like talk about a little bit of things.
Yeah.
But you have so much going on to you that made you the way you are. And that's really what I want to get across today with a few themes.
Yeah.
And I think always the best part to start off with is early life. I mean, that shaped me, that shapes everybody. Mm-hmm. And I know with you growing up in Alaska and just, getting into sports very, very early and the thing with the ghosts, like there's a lot going on. So let's kick it off.
Yeah.
What's going on in Alaska?
I don't know if the ghosts shape me very much, but it's true. I think your childhood does shape you, right? It's everything. It's how you are, who you are today is how you grew up. Mm-hmm. And I was lucky enough to grow up in a very good family. We were low, middle. I would say middle class, like at the time. Juneau, Alaska, right? You grew up there, like unbelievable place to grow up. I was able to have a lot of freedom when I was younger, which is extremely helpful. All I wanted to do was go outside. Dude, I was like, if I could go outside, I was happy. Dude, I was ready to go. In that, I didn't really think of it much at the time, but now I'm looking around, I'm like, nobody's outside, dude. Everybody's inside all the time. And I think that does have an effect on you. So for me, I had a lot of freedom. What I had from my parents was love, right? They loved me, and they kind of let me do my thing. Like one of my very first memories was me. I was actually talking about it the other day. I was walking up I must have been like 1.5, 2 years old. I'm walking up to a park that's right behind our house, and my mom just tells me, she's like, hey, just make sure you stay in the gutter. And then I was just like it was a lot of freedom. No one was worried about people kidnapping me or anything like that. And what that allowed me to do is really think for myself. And I got into sports very early, but it wasn't necessarily organized sports. It was, we had a good community in our neighborhood. We played a lot of games, a lot of kickball. We had a park behind our house, and there was probably, if we could get everybody out, like if everyone somehow got out at the same time, we would have maybe 10 or 12 people. So we had a good group. So I grew up with very good friends who were just, they really wanted the best for you, and I wanted the best for them. And it was such a positive environment to grow up in, which was extremely helpful now that I look back at it. Now that I guess, everyone kind of has their stages in life. And when I look at kind of where I am now, I do see a lot of people that are struggling with things, whether it's like anxiety or some kind of disorder. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but it almost always stems back to the childhood where there was something lacking or there's something that happened or whatever it may be there. But I was very fortunate to grow up in an environment where it was very positive. It was very loving, and we were just trying to have fun, man. We were just trying to go outside and play.
I think people don't realize like the implications of parenting, and that's like why when you have kids, like you got to take that serious because you're shaping somebody else's like life. Like people like me, it took me a long time to get over my trauma. Like it took me years. Like I had to go to therapy, I had to learn meditation, like I had to do an overhaul on everything that I ever knew, because that's how much it takes when you're conditioned as a child, like to think a certain way, and like that's in your subconscious. Like rewriting your subconscious is fucking hard. It's really, really hard.
Undo all that damage, right?
Yeah, you got to replace that trauma with like good things. You got to replace like that story in your head, like you're not good enough, or you might not be this or that, with like things that you are good enough. And then like you have to write new memories. So this is why I'm good enough.
Yeah, and that takes work, man. That's I compliment you a lot. It's hard to do. That is not easy to do. It's a lot of work. It's mental work, which is probably more difficult than physical work. I would say for sure. And, but you're able to see that if you do put the time in and you do point yourself in the right direction, you're able to grow from it. So kind of no matter how bad your childhood was, really, it can be undone. It's just going to take time.
It's all on your plate, and it's always like within your view. And I think that that's something that, you do really well. But before we skip into all of that, growing up in Alaska, you had great parents. I've met your parents. Your parents are awesome. Like you can just tell they were great parents. Having that good friend circle, that all helps.
Definitely.
But that allowed you to get into baseball at a young age. And I know sports, it had a different effect on you. I feel like some people don't utilize it the way it can be, but I know that like you really utilized it for its full extent, not just physically, but mentally. So talk about like how you started out in baseball.
Well, I didn't. It all started in what was the Chicken Yard in Juneau, Alaska, which is a park behind our house. I didn't get into baseball like organized until I was 10, which seems kind of like young just thinking about a 10-year-old. But nowadays, everybody's getting in at like 5 years old, 6 years old, and they're getting into travel ball and all this crazy nonsense. I was very much into like I wanted to enjoy it. My parents didn't push me into it. It was something I very much enjoyed. And I think the structure you're referring to came from later. Like in my early age, baseball didn't shape me as much early on as it did. What it does is it teaches you how to deal with failure. Like if you're a hitter, let's say you're a baseball hitter, and this is a very common saying in baseball, where if you get out 7 out of 10 times, you're in the Hall of Fame. That means you're dealing with, out of 10 times, you have 7 failures. So what that teaches you is it's okay to fail, and it teaches you how to deal with failure, and it teaches you really have to get, as we said in baseball, to the next pitch. Like I was a pitcher, you throw a bad pitch, you have to be, and some guy hits out of the ballpark and you failed, you have to get back on it that next pitch. You can't pout around and throw, especially as the game gets better and you grow at higher and higher levels. You can't let a mistake you just made bother you for 10 pitches, or you're going to be in a world of trouble. So it helps you with that. And I think that's probably, there's other things with team chemistry and camaraderie, and especially when you get into like college, if you're 5 minutes late, you might it's like the world came to an end. So it teaches you accountability from that standpoint. But baseball, just as a sport, it really has taught me to deal with, I see failure differently. I'm already on to the next thing. Like I have no problem failing. No one likes to fail. It doesn't feel good when you give up a bunch of runs and you go home and you feel like crap for a couple of days. But you do know the sun's going to come out the next day and you're going to get another chance at it.
That's amazing, and I kind of want to unpack that too, because I feel like just because you're in sports, that doesn't mean that you automatically adopt that mindset. I feel like the people who are best in sports are able to adopt that mindset. Like you look at Tom Brady, you look at like Aaron Rodgers, and the people who like they focus on that play, like they let go of it, and like they're focused on where they're at. So they're very, very present, and like being able to lock in that mindset and figure that out, I feel is like a challenge in itself. So do you feel like that came naturally to you, where you were like, okay, this is like the why behind it, or how did that piece like come into play?
It came somewhat naturally because I've always been pretty even keel. And so I wouldn't have like a bunch of highs and lows, which is very important in a sport when you're like baseball, when you're pitching. But it's very much taught to you as far as like the game, as far as baseball. and even life. The game lets you know. Like, if you start to get cocky and you start to think you don't have to put the time in that you put in, you're gonna it shows up later. You're gonna fail. Like, you're gonna give up runs. You're gonna get yourself in bad positions. You're gonna make bad pitches. And it's the same thing with like sales or something. You could be doing great in sales and see it all the time, and then you start kind of slacking off. And where that hurts you is 3 months down the line when you're not continuing to fill that funnel and grow that way. So I think it's come somewhat naturally to me, but it is very much like it forces you to learn it because the game shows you. Like, there's not, when you get out of the sports world, it's a little bit, I always thought when I was transitioning, and we'll get into that, but I always thought everyone was a little bit soft coming out, because it's like you are like, you make a mistake in baseball, you are let, it shows you right then, right there, that you made that mistake, and it's like right in front of you. You have to change it. You have to adapt. Where in the outside world, you can kind of float along and kind of drift off and kind of go do whatever you want to do. So it was learned. I mean, it was natural in some ways, but it was also very much kind of beaten into you by the game.
So it's almost like a forced accountability. Like, it's in your face.
Yeah.
Like, you have to deal with this. And then with that forced accountability, it's like, oh, like, I have to learn from this and move on. If I can continue to dwell on this last thing, I'm not going to be able to achieve it at that level.
Yeah.
Dude, that is so awesome. And I never played sports growing up, clearly. I never got into fitness until like later in life, and I definitely like feel like that presentness, like when I'm lifting, or like even when you write something out in paper. Like, if you write a rep scheme out in paper, and that's why I write down all my workouts now, because when I finish them and you finish something that you like set out to do, and it's very tangible, like, I did this number of reps.
Yeah.
You get a reward from doing that.
That's true.
So, I mean, it's like the same as like pitching a no-hitter.
Yeah.
a little bit different.
Maybe a little bit different, but no, I definitely agree with you on that for sure. 100%. Sports I think it's very important for kids. And when I have kids, they are going to be in sports. It teaches you a lot of things. And just one of them being, accountability and teaching how to deal with failure, which is obviously very important.
Well, what's it like being at, a D1 school, one of the most prestigious, best schools in the country? I mean, I would say Oregon Ducks. I mean, Phil Knight and Nike, it's one of the most known teams. They have the best, sports programs because they have the largest budget by far. Yeah. Like, staying even keeled when you're in that kind of environment. I mean, there's a lot of temptation in college when you're a star athlete, obviously, right?
Yeah, but so just to give you an idea, I went from Alaska. So I lived in Alaska for, maybe when I was 16 years old, we moved. My dad was able to take his job and do it remotely. Kind of like, that was like, feels like that was 20 years ago. No one was doing it then, but he was able to do his job remotely. So we left Alaska. We would leave Alaska for 6 months and go down to Southern California, where he grew up. His parents were down there before they passed away, but we were down there, and so I would go and I would play baseball while I was down there. So I went from Alaska down to Southern California, and then I played at a local junior college. Out of high school, I had 0 scholarship offers. I had one school, and I can barely remember the name of it. It was a D2 school out in California somewhere, and I went out there and I threw a bullpen for him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that was awesome." And then he calls me like a couple of days later, like, "Hey, we want to bring you out and offer you something." And he's like, "Hold on, let me call you right back." And he never called me back. And so I didn't really want to go there anyway, but I probably would have, to be honest. And then I get a call from the local junior college, his coach, and I was like, I don't want to go to this junior college thing. I don't, you see your friends, it kind of sucks because you see your friends going off to like bigger schools, even if they're not playing sports. You're like, everyone wants to go to like a bigger, especially when you're a senior in high school. It's kind of like it's somewhat important. At least it feels important, right? But I got a call from a junior college. I went to that junior college, and the coach was unbelievable. I really, really liked him. No scholarships my senior year of high school. The next year, I had 35 Division I scholarships lined up. It was like, the funny thing about it was I was the same person. I wasn't like I went 1 year and went and 1 year I'm significantly better. I went to this showcase camp, and I threw to 5 batters, and I think I punched out like 3 of them, and I just rolled through those guys. I was like, just rolled through them, and then just I got when I got back, went to the thing with my dad. When I got back to my phone would not stop ringing, dude. Every day, Long Beach State, Auburn ended up offering me a full ride scholarship, which is very rare in baseball because there's only 11.7 scholarships for 35 guys. So giving up a full ride is very rare. Basically anywhere I wanted to go, I could have gone, which is kind of unique because I was literally the same person. I was like, I've been throwing these same pitches and doing this same stuff for the last, I don't know, can't tell you how many years. Why is it now that everybody loves me? It's very unique because it's like all it takes really is one person, and that can be in life too. One person to take an interest in you or believe in you, and then suddenly everyone kind of comes on board, and they're like, oh yeah, we're all on board with this thing. So, so I went to junior college, and then I decided to go to Oregon, and then I was drafted out of Oregon, and I played 3.5 years in the Royals system, which was kind of different. But at Oregon, when you say like going to a Division I school is very prestigious, I liked junior college better than I liked the Division I school, because what I liked about junior college is when you went to play baseball there, no one really wanted to be there. Everyone on that team was there to play baseball, and we wanted to win. When I went to Oregon, so I'm like, oh, this is going to be way better. I get there, and it was kind of a lot of guys. Everyone was good. Like, everyone was nice and all that, but it was a lot of guys that have been told how great they are their entire lives. Because they've been like, maybe they're freaking huge. You're in high school. Everyone grows at different rates. You got some guy who's huge and, throws all hard. And it was an interesting thing.
So I want to pack all of that up to this point, because you're like 21, 22 years old at this point, and it's like at this point you have learned forced being present. So presence, you've learned accountability. You've learned that if you keep trying, one person takes an interest in you, that can change everything. And you've learned that you want to be around a circle of people who actually want to be there and want to win. So you learned at a very, very young age, a lot of really, really great things that, I
didn't really think about it like that. And I got one more to add to that list now that I think about it, is we talk about growing up in Alaska. When I'm down here, we're in Arizona. What's different about it is in Alaska, nature is king. And there's something very humbling about that, because you can't, you aren't bigger. Kind of around here, you feel bigger than nature. You feel bigger than the world. You're like, I'm in Scottsdale. Everything's taken care of. You got whatever you want within striking distance. In Alaska, nature's the winner there. You're just trying to, if you can go on a hike and get lost and you're done. You're in the wilderness. It's not playing around there. So it also teaches you kind of humility from that standpoint. Understand to really be, I think it's very important to be connected to nature, and it very much it adds that to the list as well.
I feel like that's really cool, because humility, I've already done one of these videos strictly on humility and how important that is. And you've got a lot of great qualities that have been brought about early in life. That's partially due to good parenting, but that's also because you put yourself in a system to succeed. And I feel like you've always kind of, believed in yourself from that standpoint. So the sooner you can put yourself in situations, realize that failure is okay, and get on with your life, that's what's going to allow you to be, successful long term. Because when you think about people who stray off, people who they don't take the risks, they don't have confidence in themselves, they don't do anything that they're supposed to be doing, you will never ever develop those skills. It's literally a trial by fire. And then when you're thinking about humility too, growing up in South Dakota, I never thought about it from that standpoint, but I watched my dad bust his ass. From before I would even be up for school till long, when I was in bed, every single day he was doing this, from 5 a.m. till 10 at night. That must have been my entire life growing up. It was constantly every day. So that made me realize, one, holy crap,
That's work.
That's work. Like that's real work. I got to watch a guy like go through it. And I mean, when my parents got divorced and then he had to get a job and do that, my dad was working a job. He was running a farm by himself. He took care of like 3 kids. Like that instilled in me. Like that's something I feel like carried me, because that was one of the things. I didn't have confidence, but the hard work aspect, I saw like my dad went through hell and he came out the other side because he never quit. He just never, ever, ever quit. He just went through it and went through it. So those lessons are so, critical. And then in terms of humility too, like in South Dakota, you could do everything right. You could have, the right land. You could get the crops at the right price. You could do everything right. And if it doesn't rain, you're done. The crops are gone. If it rains too much and you can't get out there and it's flooded, you're done. Also done. So you could do literally, I would watch my dad, some years they'd be so good and like we would have great fruitful years and we'd have great Christmases and everything would be just awesome. And then some years were not so awesome. Some years it was like I watched my dad go through a lot of stress. So seeing some of those things early on is really, really important. I guess it's how you view it too.
Yeah.
Like you could view it as a bad thing and I could have viewed it as like, man, that was hard and that was a bad thing. But like you had said, the way that you view failure is everything.
Yeah, that's true. And I think something you touched on there that's important about taking risks. I was actually thinking about this the other day. Like you should be putting yourself in positions where you get that feeling that you don't want to do something. Like that feeling where I felt that, if you go back to baseball, I felt that same feeling every single time I would go out and pitch. You get that feeling, but the thing about that feeling is the worst part of it is that feeling. As soon as you do it, it just becomes better, and that really is how you grow. A lot of people just try to avoid that feeling because it comes up, bro. That feeling will come up several times a week where you don't want to do something, you don't want to pick up the phone and call someone. You don't want to go to the gym. You don't want to. And then it's the worst part of that is just that you don't want to do it. Once you just do it, you're like, hey, that wasn't so bad. And that right there is how you grow. That's growth. Like you're sitting and you got all this equipment here. You have everything's going well with your show. Well, that happened because you took action. I'm sure you didn't. There were times where you didn't want to do it, and you're like, hell, I don't want to do this thing, but you did it, and now.
The first video when it was after we were doing the Instagram live talk, I was sitting in my old room with a small ring light, kind of like that one, with my phone right there. And I remember it was when COVID started, and it was the first video, and I was sweating so badly sitting in my room. Dude, I can't remember the last time I was that nervous. I was like, why am I so nervous to make this little video? But I was sweating bullets, dude. I was freaking out. And
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
that is a good thing.
And then the first time I did that video, I was like, oh, I can do that. And then the same time with this equipment too. When I was researching this, dude, like people don't realize how much goes into making one of these things.
It's a lot of work. They see it on the Instagram and they just go next. He's making videos.
You see something and you see somebody that like achieves at a high level or does something very, very well, and you assume that it was like easy to get there or that they were lucky, like you said. But dude, it's a lot of work, like to produce something.
Yeah, not much work.
Not to take credit into that.
It takes so much time.
But time and
nobody
failure.
Sees. Yeah, and failure, of course.
And failure, but. I think the next thing that I want to get into, because, early life is very, very important. We learned a lot of lessons there. Mm-hmm. Something that I think that you do really, really well is pivoting in life. And I think one of your largest pivots in life that got you on track to where you are now is when I first met you. When you left baseball and you went to your first company and you got into sales, I feel like that was a major pivot. And one moment that I want to key on in specific is you are in the Royals system, like you're doing the thing, you're living your dream, like your little dream that you've worked since 10 years old to get to this point in your life. Mm-hmm. And they walk you into the locker room and they say, that's it. Like that is everything you worked for. That's it.
Yeah.
How are you feeling like that second?
My honest opinion on that very second, I felt relieved. I felt very relieved. I wasn't that crazy about pro baseball. Because going back to like what I said about the junior college, where I liked the game, I want to play it to win the game. Pro ball in the minor leagues is very similar to that. Like people don't want to play the game; they just want to go up to the big leagues. They'll do whatever. Nobody cares if you win, which is a very strange thing. I think I would like the big leagues a lot more because everyone, when you're there at the top and you're trying to win a World Series. So I was kind of relieved. I was just kind of burnt out on it, to be honest. And so I was released by the Royals, and then I went and I played 1 year of independent baseball, which stretched all the way from Laredo, Texas, all the way up to Winnipeg, Canada. It was in this league that stretched and you were taking a bus. But the thing was, people wanted to win, and it was cutthroat. If you didn't perform, you got cut. It was very serious, it was just an unbelievable atmosphere. But on the pivot, where the difficult part came from, it wasn't the day that I got released from the Royals. The difficult part came from I played a year of independent ball, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then that is when things change, because then you go from my whole life. So if I'm 25, 26 years old at that point, I've basically been identified myself as a baseball player. Everywhere I went, I'd go in the grocery store. I didn't see, if someone had like a regular job, it was all just foreign to me. I was very much a baseball player, identified as a baseball player. Whenever I talked to anyone, they're like, oh, you play baseball? It was all they wanted to do was talk about baseball. That's all they wanted to do. And then that ends, and I'm like, okay, what am I? I'm a baseball player who's no longer in baseball? That doesn't really make any sense. So that's where the transition part, and it's very difficult. It was a very difficult thing, because you essentially lose your identity. You don't really know what you are, and you have to start trying to figure out what that is.
I can always pinpoint like when a good clip is gonna be like. There's 3 to 5, and I say that I'm gonna continue to say this in every show, because like you get an hour interview and there's 3 to 5 points that I usually will get that's just like wow, and that is one of them. Like I've never heard you frame it in that way to me ever, and we've been friends for 5 years. So
well, I just need a microphone. Give me a microphone, I'll start talking.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, you never gave up. That's the thing, is like you had the identity crisis, and I imagined, since that is your whole life, and like you identified so well with that, and then all of a sudden like you had a new opportunity. But where I feel like you were able to pick up the ball is like quitting wasn't an option for you. You never were like, because baseball is no longer my identity, now I'm nothing. Like I bet that thought didn't even cross your mind. I'm sure it was.
Oh, it did. It definitely did. Big time. Like all the time. I didn't go from baseball into sales. I went from baseball into a job doing like setup, like digital advertising setup stuff. It was no sales. It was like I went to work and I put my headphones on. Imagine that thing. I'm pitching at stadiums with thousands of people, and then the next thing I know, I'm sitting in behind this computer, just pop, data entry kind of thing. And that part was very difficult, because it was like, what am I doing here? Like, am I ever going to make, and then I'm like, how am I going to make any money? I didn't know about sales. My association with sales was that it was this weird thing that you had to be a greaseball to do. And I'm like sitting there like, I don't want to get into sales. And I was basically forced. My buddy Marcus basically like, no, you're going to do this. You're going to do good at it. And that was another talk about uncomfortable. I didn't just go into sales and pick up the phone like, hey guy. And we were cold calling car dealerships. Is there anything harder than cold calling a car dealership and trying to get a general manager on the phone and some guy's losing his mind on the other end? You know, I was interviewed essentially by like the sales director and the owner of the company, and I was like, I don't even know what to say. Like, everything was so foreign to me, and I had no confidence, and I didn't really know, like, and I'm like, I don't know. I could barely even talk in this thing.
So nervous.
And then literally a month later, I'm sitting in the office with those same people, and I'm telling them like, no, I need to do that deal. I'm like, and they're looking at me like, what the hell happened to this guy? I was like, I'm looking at them. I'm like, I didn't have any confidence. Like, isn't it obvious? I didn't have confidence. Now I got some more confidence here. But that was a very difficult. I mean, getting into sales is a very, very difficult thing, but once you realize that what sales is, it can definitely change your life.
So I now thinking about it and like really unpacking that piece of it, it's like you lost your confidence in your identity in baseball, and your success in future things is your ability to be confident in it. Because The honest to God truth is
Yeah.
nothing's out of reach for any of us. Like, we could do anything at any time. You look at somebody that's got massive levels of success, that's a millionaire, that's done this or that, and you like assume like that can't be me, like that can't be that person. That's not true at all, because that person was not always that person. That person is that person as a result of the confidence, and they believed in themselves when nobody else does. And when you find that confidence and you believe in yourself when nobody else will, that's how you're going to get opportunities.
Yep. And that's so true. What one of my coaches at Oregon used to say, he said, well, and it's kind of something to think about, like, what comes first, confidence or success? And, how do you answer that question? Because really, but what he says is it's in the preparation. And so what preparation does is prepare. If you're like, let's take sales, for instance, if you prepare and you practice and you rehearse and you get familiar with the thing you're selling, and then that will breed a little bit of confidence, which will lead to success. But it is basically impossible to be successful without confidence. And I see guys in sports especially. You'll see guys that are very confident that really aren't that good, but they're confident and they find a way to get it done. And then you see the other thing where a guy is unbelievable. He's unbelievable, but if he doesn't have any confidence, it doesn't work. It never will ever work. I don't really know why that is, but it's just how it is. Like when I was pitching, there is something we would always say: you have to be committed to the pitch, right? You have to be. If in my whole like pro career, that is really what hurt me. Was I came into the Royals system, and they drafted me as a starter because at the time statistically the best relieving core in the history of baseball. And I wasn't true to my identity. When I got there, it was all they cared about was throwing hard. I'm not a guy who threw very hard. And so what I did is I bought into that. Well, that wasn't me. So I wasn't true to myself. And that's really, I feel like if I was true to myself and I believed in myself and I just did what I did, I 100% believe I'd be pitching in the big leagues right now. No question. I feel my stuff I had very, very good stuff. The only thing I was not doing was I wasn't being me. Now, whether that's a kind of an organizational thing where they weren't looking for me, though. They were looking for hard throwing guys. So I didn't really fit in that system. But back to like committing to the pitch. Anytime I ever threw a pitch and I was like I think, because you think in your head before what you're gonna throw, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go a fastball away here. Catcher throws down a curveball. I would be like, okay, curveball. Anytime I did that, I would always get in trouble. Literally every single time.
Well, think about this too, and I can tell you, just I don't even know how I figured this out, but I figured it out, and I think it's very true. When you think about confidence and why it is that people who are unconfident can't reach that level of success, it's because it doesn't matter if you have all the ability in the world. If you do not commit to something in its entirety, you will not reach that goal. If you've got 1 foot in and 1 foot out, you're not fully committed to that thing. And if you can't see yourself doing something, like if I don't think I can close this deal, I'm not closing that deal. I mean, I might get lucky every once in a while, but like that's not a winning recipe.
Yep.
If you've done the preparation and you have the skill because you've built it up over time, and you've got the confidence because you believe that you can make it happen.
Yep.
It's like a limiter in your mind. It's like if I'm a car and I've got like a chip in there that says you can only go 80 miles an hour, but the car can go 125. You got to take that chip off, and that's the same with your brain. I mean, I'm going through this right now with being laid off because of COVID and like having to bounce back. Dude, like applying to 300 jobs, that built my confidence. Working out twice a day, that rebuilt my confidence. Starting this show rebuilt your confidence. So if you can pivot and find other things within your life that you can like, I guess supplement your confidence. Like I might not be good at sales at this moment, but there are other things that I can be good at to supplement that and like kind of get back into the flow because
and get some momentum.
You got to get momentum.
Yeah.
You have to get momentum. And
and you have to believe in yourself.
Yeah. So you've done a great job at pivoting, dude, that story that you told right there, not many people in the world have that story of that caliber of having to quit baseball and then start a new career where your entire identity has been that thing. So I really do commend you for that.
I appreciate that.
The next portion of this, and I know I compliment you all the time, but it's very, very true. one thing that you do tremendously well is like you are a selfless leader. When people look at you and they follow you, it's not because you have authority over them. It's not because you're demanding like things from people. People follow you because of your energy, because you lead by example. When you do things, it's because of your actions. Like people buy into people who are authentic, and you are yourself. And that's a form of selfless leadership. Like most leaders in the US strive to be like that. And most of them are not, because they're doing things for the wrong reasons. How do you feel like, you know, in business now? And I mean, you pivoted to owning a company. Now you're a partner in VYRL marketing. You guys have like 20 employees now. Like it's grown a lot in the last year. And I think a big piece of that is selfless leadership. How do you feel like that's coming to play, whether that's baseball or like your parenting? How do you feel like, you know, just to lead by example, and how does that come so naturally to you?
Well, I guess it comes naturally because I'm not really a vocal. I'm not like a big rah guy, like pump people up and do that. And so all I can do, and I suppose baseball taught me this, is I can only, because you have 9 players on the field and everyone has to kind of do their job. And so you can't be worried about what other people are doing. You have to go out there and do your job and very much lead by example. And it just kind of fit into kind of my personality. I always like that. And I think I am very true to myself, and I am authentic. And when people see that, they do gravitate to it, because when you are authentic, your energy is up. You know, when you believe in yourself, your energy is up. You're vibrating at a higher level. And when you're around people that may not be vibrating at that level, they very much are drawn to it. It's just human nature. I mean, probably the people that do the best job picking it up on it are girls. Like, they know it doesn't really matter. You can walk up to a girl one day, and then, you know, a year later you can be the exact same person, and suddenly they're way more into you. They can really read your confidence, and they really pick up on your vibration. Like, if you're someone who is very true to themselves, and you're comfortable with who you are, they're very much gravitate towards that. But I'm kind of jumping into relationship stuff. But if you're someone who's like, I need a relationship, I need a good girl, I need this. When you're putting out that need energy, that you need or you have to have something, it really means you don't have it. Like, if I need something, I want something, it means you don't have it, and that is very much a lack. And it's seen from, like, it's just the energy that goes out is not as high a vibration, and girls, just relating this to like dating, very much pick up on that. And it's the same with sales. It's the same with leading a company, which is, you know, it is quite a bit of work. It really is. It's really the same with everything.
And I think what they actually call that is scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset, where if you have a lacking mentality where it's like, I don't have these things and therefore I need them, and you're like trying to grab from them, it's not natural. So like people can sense that. It's almost like a tension in the energy. But you know, when you think of abundance, one of these guys that I follow, Alex Morton, one of his big sayings is like, I am what I am. Like, he just tells himself, I am what I am. And I've dabbled around with that a little bit myself. And I feel like now I'm in this flow where, even though this is about you, I'm just trying to like make this relatable to everybody. When you're in a flow where you realize that you are doing everything that you can, you're confident in your ability, and you know that as long as you don't quit, that you will eventually get to your goal. Everything else is easy. And like, when you're doing it for the right reasons, like, you run a business because you like this. You generally feel like you're helping people. Mm-hmm. I do this because I love doing this. Like, I 1000% believe that what I'm saying and what the guests that I'm bringing on are like making an impact in other people's lives. And when you can get to that like selfless flow where your preparation has been there, like, you're doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, you're confident because you're doing things for the right reasons, everything just flows. It all just flows to you, and it's very, very cyclical.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And in your case, I suppose you doing this is being true to yourself, and that the way that you're not like, oh, I need to do this to impress people and all that. You've made this part of who you are. The reason you're making videos is not because you feel like you need to get somewhere or do something. The reason you make these videos is because you generally want to help people, and this is making these daily videos has become a part of you. So it makes it so you are really doing, you're being true to yourself, just like going to the gym. If you go to the gym and you're like, hey, I want to go to the gym to have a good body, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But the next step up from that is I'm going to the gym because that is who I am, because I am someone who takes care of themselves, who puts out good energy. And I think that's why we all see it. We've all seen this thing at the gym where you see these guys that are very strong and very and there's it's like almost like something is lacking, and so they're focused on the weightlifting thing, which is fine. That can be their journey. But when you see things as I'm doing this because that is who I am, then your life just becomes a million times better.
I couldn't say it better than that, honestly. And that's a very, very hard one to pick up on. That's one that I'm just starting to realize now is like being your authentic self. Like that might be the key behind all of it. I mean, confidence is very important. Like being present, like those are pieces to it. Like being present, that's like a tool. Awareness is a tool. Like confidence is a tool. Those are all pieces of that. But like there's something that's said about being authentic that people are drawn to. I think even now, like when you look at that, and I'm not going to get into politics, but when you look at like what is happening now in the landscape, it's very, very clear who is being authentic and who is being genuine and who really wants to help people and who does not. And people have an ability to pick up on that and sense that. And I think that is where you will find opportunities too. That's where they'll be drawn to you because they want to give up.
Come to you. Exactly. And I haven't always been, that's something I've worked in the last year. I've done a much better job with that. That's something that I've been focusing on and something I focus on today. That's really my focus now, is just being who I am and being true to myself.
I think you're doing a good job with that, and something that you've given so much. I've seen you give to a lot of people, and being able to taper that back to get dialed in and be the best that you can be, and realize that if you're giving all of yourself to other people, you are not doing yourself the best service, which is then taking from those people because you are not being the full version that you could be.
And I realize that, like right now I'm essentially doing this sober October, right? But I didn't think of it. The reason I'm like, when I'll tell people I'm not drinking this month, people are like, oh, sober October. And I'm like, it just kind of happened that way. I was in Mexico about a month ago. And I was like, I feel like I'm not being true to myself with how much I'm drinking and like partying. I'm not like partying like crazy or anything, but I feel like I was just overdoing it. It didn't feel like that is what I should be doing. And so I was like, I'm going to take a month off of this and see how I feel. And I'm not taking a month off. Like the thing was like sober October. A lot of people are doing that because they're like, oh, let's see if I can muscle through this thing. I'm doing this because I feel like it's not who I am. I don't feel like I should be doing that. And I'm doing it just for me. I'm not doing it to try to beat something. And I've learned a lot from it. I'm obviously not going to, it's not something I'm going to like cut out of my life. I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm never going to drink again. I just like, I want to make sure that I'm doing it for me. And that's what I've really learned during this little journey. But I am looking forward to having a nice tequila on Friday.
At Wes's wedding, depending on when this video comes out, Wes, you're either going to be...
Oh, he's going to be married.
You'll be married at this time, so congrats.
Congrats,
Wes, on being married at this point.
Congratulations.
But, man, that is such a really, really good point. Like my one friend, Will, who I had on a few weeks ago, he called it selfishly selfless, or selflessly selfish about yourself and thinking about yourself. And that's one question I want to ask you before we get into like wrapping up here. If someone... Because a lot of people struggle with this, dude. Like a lot of people struggle with not being authentic with themselves, whether that's because of pressure that is put on them by their family and society, whether that's because they think that they need to do something and they're just like, they're not being authentic, whether that's their career or in their relationship, like they're lying to themselves. Mm-hmm. And when you lie to yourself for so long, things just blow up in the end. Eventually, eventually they're going to blow up.
Comes out some way.
Yeah, you can't just hold it together with duct tape forever. So what would you say to somebody that is not in the right path, but they have a desire to be on the right path, and they just they're not able to take that first step. And they're like, Kellen, I want to take that first step. I want to be authentic because I know that that's the answer. How do I take that first step?
Well, I like how you said that you know that you're not being yourself. I think the first thing is you have to, all the answers are inside. You know what to do. You have this thing called intuition. You have which I call it trusting the gut. If you're like a Christian, I believe they call it the Holy Spirit. It's this thing inside of us that knows right from wrong. It knows you have a moral compass. I say the first thing is you really have to start trusting yourself, because I think what a lot of people don't do is they don't really trust themselves. They've made mistakes, and they hold these mistakes and they carry them with you, whether you're like, hey, you got in a drinking and driving accident, or you got a DUI, you fell into substance abuse. Like, they carry these stories with them. I mean, we got to get those stories out of there. And the first thing we got to do is we got to start trusting ourselves. And how you trust yourselves is you got to keep promises to yourself. Because if you have a drug problem right now, you're like, I'm going to quit drugs tomorrow. I'm going to quit drugs. And then guess what? Or I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow, and you don't go to the gym. And then you're essentially teaching yourself, like, I can't even trust myself. I'm going to say I'm going to do something, and I'm not going to do it. So what you have to do is you have to say you're going to do something, and then you do it. And then you say you're going to do something, and then you do it. And then you get momentum. And you take that momentum. You got to get some momentum going. Without that momentum, you're not going anywhere. It's like pushing a snowball down a hill. You just got to get it. You got to push it. And then once it goes, it picks up momentum. So I would say if you're on that path where you're like, hey, I know something isn't right. Like, I know there's something that's bigger out there. I know this isn't who I am. You really have to look inside. You have to look inside and see how you're talking to yourself, see how you're treating yourself. And then if you come down to, hey, maybe I don't trust myself, well, then you have to start building momentum, which I think is probably the thing people struggle with the most, is you have to start keeping promises to yourself, which will then allow you to trust yourself, and then you will believe in yourself, and then you get confidence, and then, hey, then you're off and running.
That's amazing. I like that one. I mean, if you can't trust yourself, how are you going to carry out things, and how are you going to have any sort of self-confidence? And it all wraps up.
Yeah.
We had so many good topics today. I mean, from self-belief to confidence to making, keeping the promises you made to yourself to making pivots in life. There's so many good nuggets in here. I'm really excited about this one. It came out awesome. It really did. We flowed good. This is the Weekly Intentions. You knew this was coming.
I know this spot. I've been here before.
I've been here before. This is the Weekly Intention. If you could impart one piece of wisdom to anybody that they could say, I'm going to take this, I'm going to implement this right now to make a change in my life tomorrow, what would one thing be that you would give to somebody?
It's 100% what we've been talking about. If I were to implement one thing, is you got to start trusting yourself. You have to start listening to yourself. It comes up all the time. Every single day it's going to come up where, hey, you want to go to this party? Hey, do you want to do this thing? Or, hey, you have to do this, whatever you got to go to the gym. It's going to come up every single day, and you have to start making those decisions and listening when your internals say, don't do that, and then you do it. If it says don't do it, you need to go ahead and do that thing. That is the most important thing I could ever, without trusting yourself and believing in yourself. Like, what else is there? What else have we got? We have a bunch of things on the outside. You have to find a way to start believing in yourself and being nice to yourself and to trust yourself, and then you'll grow like crazy, and that's the best way to get momentum too.
There's so much in that, and I think the theme is just be kind to yourself. Trusting yourself is being kind to yourself. You got to be on your own team. So,
that's so
dude,
true.
This has been amazing. I mean, we talk every day, and I think this is going to really help a lot of people. So I appreciate you jumping on here.
Yeah.
I want to plug your business. I mean, VYRL Marketing, it's been on the screen. How do people find your team?
Well, our website is govyrl.com, and we're a digital marketing agency. And we started with Yelp. So the company started with Marcus and I. We had, we need something to sell. If you don't have anything to sell, you don't really have a company. And we kind of came across this partnership with Yelp, And we had a background in digital advertising. I didn't really know anything about Yelp. And I was like, okay, so we started getting into that, and what we realized was these businesses out there are getting just hammered on this product, on this program. And Yelp is not really built for customer service. So we've jumped into that customer service role where I am on the side of the business trying to get Yelp to work for their business. And I enjoy doing it because these guys hate Yelp, but they don't hate me, especially when I'm able, because the thing with Yelp is it can be a great revenue producer. So we've since then grown to Yelp's #1 partner, which has allowed us to do other parts of the business as well. But our website is goviral.com, which is VYRL.
You could find them on Instagram too at Viral, right? And LinkedIn Viral. Everything's viral marketing. VYRL.
Yeah, you can find the company on there. And then, but my Instagram is, I believe it's Kellen Moen 1, which is kind of, I was like, is there another Kellen Moen out there?
Kellen Moen 1.
At Kellen Moen 1. I was like, well, who is this other guy? I think it's something I probably created and then. And it's floating around.
We'll post this there too. I'll post this on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. I mean, the full interview, if you're watching this now, is going to be on YouTube on the podcast section very soon. So Apple, Spotify, wherever that is. So make sure to like, share. I mean, I get this show in front of people by you guys engaging with this. And again, I do this to help you. And I'm always bringing in leaders like Kellen, people who've had massive levels of success in their life that have also had failure that can leave that out for you in like digestible ways. So you have something to take home. So we definitely appreciate that. Kellen, thanks so much for everything. This has been really, really great.
Hell yeah. It's good to be back.
Absolutely.
Good to be back.
Until next time, this is the Weekly Intention. Take care, y'all.